What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? And today I want to talk about Legacy of Kain Ascendance. This game took me about 3 hours to finally finish, and I'm going to say one thing. I was impressed with the overarching story a little bit. I was morally impressed with Michael Bell as coming back as the voice of Raziel, and Simon Templeman coming back as the voice of Kain, and some newer voices into the fray when it came to Janos Odrin, and a new voice to another character in the game called Ethelel, which was very, very impressive. I liked the whole entire portrayal of this whole entire game. Now, to be fair, I liked it, but I didn't like it because normally I don't like these types of games. I have built myself from the ground up to a certain degree to where I have played games like this many times over in the past. And while I did like this game, but I also awkwardly found this game very frustrating. And the frustration lies within this game is the fact that it's not just because it's a 2D scroller, and that's not because of Legacy of Kain game. I think this game really has that bold Legacy of Kain title and vision and very dramatic take on the world of Nosgoth between the events of, for what I understand, between Blood of Men Legacy of Kain and Soul Reaver 1, which was really good. I really did like the way how this whole entire game really gave off a matter of perspective of the backstory from Blood Omen 1 and then from Soul Reaver 1, and going into the whole entire crux and the whole entire fray of the whole entire story of the whole entire Legacy of Kain series. Now, Simon Templeman, I would say, did such an amazing job as normal and as usual doing the voice of Kain. Michael Bell coming back doing the voice of Raziel, still remarkable, and I couldn't believe how magnificently well done they were able to do it. I mean, because they're like, I don't know how old they are, but that's besides the point. I just think that they did really good job, really amazing job in their prime, as they still are, because I'm just like, I was indignified, I was very awestruck, I was very intrigued of how they were able to come back and do their original somewhat normal voices that they were able to do for both of their roles, especially when it comes to the Legacy of Kain series. Now, I think as a whole, for me personally, I really think that the combat is pretty simplistic. It's not too difficult. There are some certain scenarios in the game to where I did figure out a little bit to where it was a little difficult to depend on whether if this was, yes, it is a Castlevania game to a certain degree, but you only have very limited type of scope when it comes to like throwables, basically. And you really don't have much throwables at all, to be fair, but it still has that Castlevania type of feel to it, which I do highly respect, because my favorite Castlevania game was Symphony of the Night, obviously, because it was one of my favorite 2D scrollers of all time back in the day. And then I think when it comes to Legacy of Kain series, or as a game as it is, it really does a magnificent job of what it's doing and where it's going to go. And I was really impressed to a certain degree in the game, to where Kain was finally able to raise Raziel as one of his firstborn lieutenants. And I'm just like, I finally realized in my own vision of how he was going to do it. And I'm like, whoa! My whole entire mind was totally very struck by it, because I'm like, this is exactly how I envisioned it. It was remarkable, and it was very well told, and a very interesting cinematic, or kind of like of a black and white type of thing in a way, but not really. It was a little bit of different type of a color schematic that they did with that type of scene, with Kain bringing Raziel back as his first lieutenant. But again, I think that's where, for me, for this game, I have a little bit of a love and hate relationship, like I said, with this game. I do. I loved it, but at the same time, I disliked it more than just hate, because there were indeed some areas much later in the game. There are areas in the game to where the platforming is there, but it's just that it's very, very tedious, and you have a little hard time trouble where you're going, even though you it's indicated by certain types of things, like being able to power up your character, whether you're playing as Cain or as Raziel. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, my overall experience with this game was very, very well done, very, very good. I definitely give this game a 7.5 in its own unique way, the story and everything else. But anyway, so much for ado, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jake from Citizen JB. You guys have a good rest of your week, and I am so glad to finally do this. I'll see you guys later. Peace.